My vintage P.A.F pickup stopped working? Now what? Okay, vintage P.A.F pickups that don't work. They're broken. Well, luckily that intro was a simulation. This is my 64 SG, and these work. So I'll prove it. Ah! Volume was down. Anyway, clearly these work, but interestingly, when I got this, well, I actually got this as a husk, but the pickups I had, years ago I purchased them because this pickup was dead and this pickup was dead. This required a simple repair. This one required one coil be rewound. But, you know, why do this video? Well, P.A.F pickups, patent sticker pickups, early T-tops, these are old enough pickups now that they do fail. And we do get, you know, have for years gotten emails periodically and calls from people that have these pickups and they need them repaired, and there's details we need to let them know about how to preserve the value of their pickups with a repair, what the extent of a repair can be, what the possibilities of those are. And I figured after I got another one of these calls last week, you know, I might as well just do a video that explains everything that I'm putting into emails and calls to educate you guys out there in case you have a pickup like this that needs repair. And whether or not we do it or someone else does the repair, at least you'll have that information that you can be armed with to get the best work done possible. Also, at the end of this video, I will I'll give a list of tips on how to avoid a P.A.F pickup repair. So there's a few things you can do that will hopefully keep your pickups as safe as possible for as long as possible. So let's get on with the video. Now first, let's start with one thing. You know, what are the symptoms of a pickup that needs, a P.A.F pickup that needs to be rewound? Well, one obvious one is that it makes no sound at all. That's pretty straightforward. Another one is it could have about half of what you would consider the typical output from that pickup. That would indicate usually that a coil is broken. Or it could be that there's an internal short that is intermittent. So you might get normal output sometimes, and you might get very weak output at others. So obviously that's not manageable and has to be addressed. So assuming you have a P.A.F pickup like this, and the same would hold true for P.A.F spec patent number pickups, early patent number T-tops, and other early T-tops, these kind of common symptoms to all. But assuming you have those symptoms, then there are a few things we need to know, us, if we're going to repair the pickup, or any other pickup repairer who's reputable will need to know before you send them a pickup. So let's go through that list. Okay, so basically the first thing you want to do is check the resistance of the pickup. That's obvious. You could do that at the jack with an ohm meter, and if you get something that's 7K or above, then that points to there's something else going on other than the pickup with your guitar. If it is obviously lower than 7K, that would definitely point to a problem with the pickup. Check solder joints inside of the control cavity if you can. It's very, we've actually gotten pickups coming in where someone has sent a pickup back saying it needed a repair, and they had, I don't know if you're probably not going to see this, maybe, but one of the little braids there soldered right to the center conductor, just one little thin strand. And they perhaps moved, replaced a pot, installed the pickups in a different guitar. Let's say they bought the pickups off of Reverb and they installed them in the guitar. They don't work. Well, could be a cold solder joint, could be an accidental ground like that. Check for the easy stuff before you send it off to somebody. Eliminate that as a possibility. So beyond that, Well, you need to check is, is it missing parts? Sometimes people they find a guitar pickup in their drawer, and it's missing parts. Well, not surprisingly, it might not work. Or you want to get it restored. Let the person who might do the repair know what parts are missing by sending a photo. They can also, when they get the photo, they can establish, is this really a collectible vintage P.A.F. patent number pickup or T-top? Establish all that stuff before you send it out. And once the person doing the repair knows, they can give you some idea what the cost is and what the possible failure of the pickup is. Sometimes the photo of the pickup will make it clear what it is. It's not uncommon for wire to be coming out from below below the tape that's protecting the coil. That happens. Sometimes I think they left the factory that way. And if that's happening, the very likely possibility is that wire has broken. So, inform the person doing the repair before you send it out, and they can give you an idea as to what the possible repair will be. All right, you've done the basics. You've sent the pickup off to someplace like ThroBak or someone else, and they get the pickup. Well, if you're lucky, there could be one of three possibilities that could be the reason for the failure that would not require a major repair. One is there could be a short from the braided wire of the coax cable that goes to the pot. After many, many repeated installations, sometimes this braided wire can short out to the center conductor because the insulation that protects the two is compromised. That is a simple repair of just replacing this braided wire. The other possibility is there could be an internal short within the pickup where something like the start wire, which is the wire that comes out the bottom of a P.A.F. bobbin, was assembled improperly right off the bat from Gibson, and perhaps they wedged that little wire underneath the magnet, and over time the insulation gets compromised and it shorts out on the base plate. I have had repairs come in like that. That's a simple repair. So the last possibility is that you can have these pigtail leads come loose from their original solder joints. And those solder joints connect these leads to the magnet wire internally in the pickup, either on the finish or the start. The start, you're basically out of luck if that happens with P.A.F., but a patent sticker pickup or a T-top might be able to be addressed because they do not have internal start leads that come out the back of the bobbin, the later ones, later patent sticker pickups. So that is a simple repair, assuming we can find the magnet wire and resolder that joint between the magnet wire and the pigtail lead. That solves the problem. Now, of course, all of these, you have to take the pickup apart and put it back together. So, we're basically disassembling and reassembling a pickup. But in about a third of the cases, that is going to be the problem. One of those three things. Now, so that brings us to serious repairs. Let's say we've got a serious repair problem. What constitutes that? Serious repair is going to be anything that requires the rewinding of the coil. Now, as one last ditch effort before rewinding a coil, we always unwind as many layers as we can to hopefully find a break that would allow us to not rewind the coil. That can happen, although most often it doesn't, but it can happen. And when that happens, then you can be really close to the resistance. It would be okay to just put the finish lead back on it, and you've got a functioning pickup now, because coil offset does vary in a vintage P.A.F. And if you're only removing a few layers of wire, this is not really going to significantly reduce the output of the pickup or the character of it. On a few rare occasions, we have gone in further and have decided, well, this is just far enough in that we can maybe splice some plain enamel wire back onto it and bring the resistance back up to where it should be. That happens every once in a while, but typically not. And two, I will note that a rewind is almost always going to be one coil. Sometimes, a catastrophic situation, you might have both coils failing. But generally, it's one coil, and more often than not, it's the screw coil. And the reason for that is that the screw coil has, even if the covers have been on the pickups, over time, there's a chance for sweat, any sort of liquid to get into the pickup via the pickup pull adjustment screw. And there's a little square hole in the bobbin right there on the screw coil that sweat can get into, and over time it can and does sometimes corrode the wire internally to where there's a break. And you have an open coil, and because of that possibility, very often the failed coil is a screw coil. Now sometimes both coils can fail because someone's taken the cover off and solder has scratched through the tape and the coil's failed that way, or they've just been uncovered for years and years and years and years, and sweat has got into the pickup that way, a string maybe is caught on the edge of it, all manner of mechanical possibilities to ruin a coil. But more often than not, it's a screw coil, especially if the cover's been on. The screw coil is very often the one that fails. Okay, you've got a serious repair. And again, first thing you could do is you could just send it to anybody, make this reputable pickup maker, say, hey, make this thing a functioning pickup. If you're going to do that, the first thing you got to do is make sure it's machine wound. There are no P.A.Fs that were not machine wound unless they were repaired years ago by someone that had to hand wind it. One very notable example of this is probably the Peter Green neck pickup. But you don't have that guitar. We're going to go with the original construction method, and that was machine wound. There are no exceptions to that one. So that's first detail. Okay, so what are the details that need to be addressed in order to repair a vintage P.A.F and preserve the value and preserve the tone? Because, this is what I hope you, considering the cost of these things, the value of these, I hope that this is the goal of everybody, because you're not going to own the guitar forever. At some point, somebody is going to have this thing. And the way I kind of describe it is that, you may think, well, I will just need a functioning pickup. And that's true. You just want a functioning pickup with the original parts. But there's something people often don't take into account with a repair that involves a rewind. The coil itself, I would describe it as it's sort of a blueprint as to how this was wound. And a vintage P.A.F could have any number of 4 machines that would have wound it. Each of those, when I take a coil apart, I'm going to be able to identify what that machine is. Each of these machines gives its own little bit of a tonal flavor to that coil. Luckily at ThroBak we have all 4 of the machines that made these things. All 4 machine models, 2 of our machines actually came out of the Gibson factory. That is unique in the repair world and in the pickup making world. But within that coil is that information that we can use. Once the wire's stripped out, we don't know what that original blueprint was. The other important information from the wire is what is the ohms per foot of the wire and what is the outside diameter of it. So we will unwind 10 feet of it, get the ohms per foot. We have a variety of wires, plain enamel wire throughout the entire 42 gauge tolerance. So we can pick wire that will match the wire of your pickup. If you can let us know or any other person doing the repair, if you have the resistance reading of what was the pickup before it failed. If you know that, that is a huge help. Beyond that, we can weigh the wire that's stripped, and that combined with what the functioning coil, assuming there is another functioning coil, we can use that along with the resistances of the functioning coil and what the kind of historic range of coil offset is for a P.A.F pickup, and we can make an informed decision about what the resistance of the repair should be. Another important detail that would be lost if the wire were stripped off is what is the length of the start pigtail wire. That affects how the wire distributes within the pickup internally as it builds up. So given that we have all of that information, we can go on to choosing the correct size wire and choosing the correct machine, correct ohms per foot of the wire, correct pigtail length, and winding a replacement bobbin that is appropriate to that pickup. And what you will get in return is a pickup that hopefully, if we have enough information, you're going to think like it's back the way it was normally. Okay, those are the details. Now, I will say that thankfully there is not a huge incidence of failing P.A.F pickups. You know, it happens, but no one's going to make a living repairing P.A.F pickups or patent sticker pickups or T-tops. Thankfully, they don't fail that much. But over the last 10 years, we have gotten more than our fair share of these repairs because, again, of our unique capability to not only make a reproduction P.A.F, but also make it very accurate, do a very accurate restoration. I'll give you a list too of details that will just hopefully prevent a failure. One is leave the cover on the pickup. If you've got a P.A.F, leave the cover on. Don't take it off. Unless, of course, it fails. The cover's protecting it, and just the act of removing the cover is now an opportunity to damage the coil. Let's see, what's the other thing here? Oh, don't get them wet. It seems obvious, but do not get them wet. If you're very sweaty, wipe down your guitar periodically if you're gigging with a P.A.F. Don't spill your beer on it. Treat it kindly and like the expensive object it is. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, don't modify it. Do not modify your P.A.F with a coil tap or 4-conductor wiring because you just figure, I gotta get that coil tap or a phase reversal thing going on with my P.A.F. That's what good reproductions are for. You can do that, but again, you're playing with fire with a pickup of this age if this is what you want to do. Let's see. Oh, here's the other. The final one on my list is do not swap magnets. Removing the magnet is, again, an opportunity to accidentally make the coil fail. The little brass screws on the back that hold the bobbins in, those only have so many times that you can take them in and out before they strip the bobbin. And especially with the vintage P.A.F. So you're asking for possible problems by switching out magnets. So don't experiment with them. Be happy with sort of the character of what they are. They vary. They have a value partly because they vary, and people really like that variation. If you have a P.A.F that has no covers, and you do not have the original cover, you can order them from us. We sell a lot of covers. We have a very accurate vintage reproduction of a P.A.F cover. We use the thinner material, and we use our own dies for it. In fact, the pickup covers on this guitar are our P.A.F covers. They're P.A.F spec patent number pickups underneath, but I want to protect these. Even though I can fix them, I don't want to fix them if I don't have to. So I put covers on them, and frankly, I actually play the guitar without covers. I like the tone better with covers. Treble is harsher without the cover. That's my opinion, and frankly, I think that's the best way to go with any P.A.F. patent sticker, patent number pickup, or even a T-top. Leave the cover on. Okay, let me go through the list here and make sure I got everything. Oh, I've got frequently asked questions. Forgot about that. Okay, frequently asked questions that relate to a P.A.F. pickup repair. Can you rewind the coil using the original coil wire? The answer to that is no, and I'll give you details. The original coil wire is what is called work hardened. So in order for it to be wound on the pickup bobbin originally, it had to go through many twists and turns and felt tensioning to get distributed onto that bobbin as it spins at high speed. All of those twists and turns, the felt, tensioning, the active winding it on the bobbin creates stress in the wire that causes work hardening and makes it more brittle. So the upshot of that is if we try to unwind the wire, likelihood is it's going to break. Let's say we can get it all off onto a spool. Well, it's going to get work hardened again as it goes through a machine if you want it machine wound. Even not machine wound, it's going to become it's going to become even more brittle as it's rewound, and it's going to break. Not had any success with this, and so the thinking is, well, we got a problem. The original wire is different than, the thinking is the vintage wire is different than current production plain enamel wire, magnet wire. This, in my opinion, is a myth. Many people will say, well, the original wire I've heard both sides of this. The original wire has impurities that the current wire doesn't have. Or the original wire was more pure, vintage 50s wire was more pure because they weren't using recycled copper, and they use recycled copper now. This is the truth. Copper for magnet wire is not pure copper, and it never was. It's an alloy. There are impurities put in it on purpose, other metals, in order to give it the properties needed. And those properties are, it needs to have a certain resistance, or ohms per foot, for a certain diameter of wire. And it has to have the properties that will allow it to be drawn into the correct size. Those two things are what affect the tone of the magnet wire. Beyond the coating, because the coating is important. But as far as the actual copper wire, that alloy is used in old wire, it's used in new wire. It varies actually a little bit based upon manufacturer, because they do change with the raw material that they start with as far as what the alloy is that they choose to use. And the two current production makers of magnet wire in the U.S., one of them is a little higher ohms per foot, one of them is a little lower. These are manufacturing variations. But that idea of impurities, which is really there on purpose, because it's an alloy, the copper wire is baked into the ohms per foot of the wire and the outside diameter. So if we know that information off of your coil, we get 10 feet of it off, we measure it with a micrometer to get the outside diameter, we measure the ohms per foot, calculate the ohms per foot from 10 feet of wire, we can choose a tonal match to that wire. It's not any more complicated than that. So that addresses the magnet wire of the frequently asked question. Okay. Oh, here's one. I don't like the sound of my P.A.F. It works fine, but I want it rewound because I'd like something with a higher resistance. Let's say it's 7K, and I'd really like it to be 8.6K. Will you rewind it? No. The reason, because we would be not doing you a favor. You'd be better off selling it and trying to find another vintage P.A.F. that had the resistance you wanted. We don't want to, kind of the rule of any sort of restoration is you want it to be, if at all possible, reversible without causing, so a future repair person can repair it if needed. And you don't want to do anything that would permanently devalue the pickup. or whatever the item being restored is. And we follow that rule. Let's see. I have a P.A.F pickup that is not a P.A.F, but I want it rewound to be like a P.A.F. Can you do that? We don't do that. So, I mean, we do get that sometimes, hey, I've got a burst buck, and I'd like you guys to rewind it to be like this model of pickup. We don't. You can buy our pickups, and you'll be very, I think, happy with our ability to recreate a vintage P.A.F. But we don't do rewinds like that. Let's see if I'm missing anything. This is sort of related to the resistance question. We do have a little flexibility as far as the resistance of your pickup. Let's say we got the information from the failed coil, and it was a matter of, hey, we can tweak the resistance up or down with the coil offset within what's appropriate for a P.A.F. Would you like us to do that? That is something that we can do because we're keeping historically correct. It's a rewound coil, so there is a range of some flexibility we have there, but it's not going to make a difference between a 7.6K and 8.6K pickup. It's just going to lean it towards a little hotter or a little less hot, depending upon if it's going under a bridge or a neck. Maybe someone wants to do that. But, okay, I think I have covered all of the territory with this. Thank you for sitting through it. Again, thank you. If you enjoyed the video, click like. Click the bell to get notifications of future videos. And once again, thanks for letting ThroBak be part of your search for great guitar tone.